Hello and welcome to the show. You know Ben Crump as a crusader for social justice and police reform, but today you're going to get to know another side of this world-renowned civil rights attorney. It is my honor to welcome the novelist, Ben Crump. Hello.
Hello, Portia.
It is a pleasure to have you here.
The honor is mine, and you look beautiful.
I thank you. I thank you, dear brother. It is such a pleasure to have you here, and I cannot wait to dive into Worse Than a Lie, and the story about what your grandmother said is worse than a lie. But before we do that, I'd be remiss if I did not have you say something about the passing of your frat brother and legendary icon of civil rights, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Yeah, Portia, it's of such irony. I got the call 4:30 in the morning from Reverend Al and others about the passing of Reverend Jackson, who was not just a mentor, not just a friend, not just an Omega fraternity brother, but he truly, for all of my life and for most of us, was the standard bearer for civil rights.
Right.
And I was so fortunate that he worked with me on many cases. I and Reverend Al, from Trayvon to Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd.
Right.
And I would never forget one time we were working on a hard case, and Reverend Jackson said, "Attorney Crump, remember, you don't drown because the water is deep. You drown because you stop kicking." He said, "Ben, we can never stop kicking. You can never stop kicking. I don't care what the situation is." And so as I think about him transitioning yesterday and the official launch of my novel, it just was such irony in life. And I want to believe Reverend Jackson would have enjoyed this civil rights legal thriller.
Right, and that's exactly what it is, which I feel like we haven't heard a book described like that in quite some time, if not ever.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Worse Than a Lie. This is something that you spent years writing.
Yes, ma'am. You know, I was about 5 years, Portia. Working at the time on Breonna and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery cases. And so it was therapeutic in many ways. And the reason I started writing the book was my personal hero, Thurgood Marshall. He once said that most people would never really know what happens in a courtroom when you're fighting for liberty and justice for marginalized people. So he said he would always write his legal memorandums and his pleadings to be very engaging so that people would want to read them and that they would be educated. Well, what could be more engaging than a legal thriller?
Right.
And so, you know, John Grisham wrote The Rainmaker, Lincoln Lawyer with Michael Connelly, but there's never been a superhero lawyer in fiction that looked like me.
Exactly.
And from our community.
Right.
So that's what Bo Lee Cooper, the title character in Worse Than a Lie, represents for the culture.
And when we talk about the culture, as we look at our beloved ancestor, Thurgood Marshall, from the courtroom to the Supreme Court, this man led the life that you have tried to model.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How does that translate into the work that you've been doing over the years and end up with a novel? Because I think so many people would have expected like this this piece about an analysis of everything that you have been fighting for, as opposed to a novel that gives us a different window into what it looks like to fight.
Yeah, you know, Portia, Thurgood Marshall is my North Star. And I've studied so much about Thurgood, and he understood, like I understood, it's not enough just to fight in the court of law, but you also got to fight and win in the court of public opinion to affect hearts and minds. And so really, when you think about Worse Than a Lie in this novel, I'm trying to affect hearts and minds that aren't going to know the details of what happened in the court. But boy, they will read this book and they will wait for the movie to come out. And they just like, A Few Good Men, just like A Time to Kill, all these movies, they will be engaged and they will be educated.
Yeah, and I've got to touch on this. You said, and when the movie comes out, because you're claiming it clearly. That is something that you would like to see happen.
I think so, for the fact that we are trying to educate as many people as we can with this literature. And I grew up on with my grandmother watching Perry Mason, and it inspired me. And now I've been inspired by, Grisham with the Rainmaker and the Lincoln Lawyer and Matlock. And so we need to see us in that courtroom in our brilliance, being able to bring home, justice where they say there is no chance for justice.
And the premise of this book, Worse Than a Lie, what is worse than a lie?
Well, my grandmother used to keep us when my mother went to work, raising me and my two little brothers. And my grandmother was just wise with a third grade education, but she was wise like she had a PhD. She would say, what's worse than a lie? To tell the truth and have nobody believe you. And so in the novel Worse Than a Lie, you see in the courtroom, it goes so much deeper than that. And it's a thriller. It has all the twists and turns, and then it has a jaw-dropping ending that you don't see coming.
Well, and the other interesting twist here is that the principal character, the person who becomes the victim of police violence, is a police officer.
Yes, ma'am. And that was intentional.
Why?
Because, a lot of this borrows from reality, and so many times they try to assassinate the character of the victim. So we wanted Hollis Montrose to be such a beyond reproach. I mean, a model citizen, and yet it didn't matter, because when they looked at him, they didn't see him. They projected what they saw in him when they killed him.
They didn't see his
when
badge.
they shot him the night that President Obama was elected.
And it's interesting that you set that up as the atmosphere of the environment into which this whole story starts, right?
Yes, ma'am, and that was intentional as well.
Yeah, well, everything you do is intentional, as we know, right?
I'm trying to take the reader on a journey, and to see behind the curtains of, like Thurgood Marshall said, what really happens in a courtroom when you have to fight for justice.
And I thought I read where you said somewhere, writing this, it was cathartic, as you mentioned, but it was also just part of the journey of what you do when you're doing a closing argument anyway.
Yes, ma'am.
It is making the case of a story that needs to be heard.
And we have so many more stories to tell.
We do. I want you to stay with us, because this story continues and this conversation continues right after the break.